So this is the bag of popcorn I got when I went to see Barbie, and I don't know who approved this. A movie without popcorn is like Han without Leia, because they broke up. They broke up in the movies. It should say movie without popcorn is like Han without Chewbacca, because they were friends till the end. And here on the other side, un film sans popcorn c'est comme Jenny sans forest. Are you kidding me? They were apart most of the movie, and she got AIDS and died. Who approved this? So I caught Barbie on opening day, which isn't something I usually do. The only other movies I caught on opening day were Avengers Infinity War and Sausage Party.
The pipes are coming. Oh, Jesus, fuck! She's peeling me fucking stuff! Fuck!
Most of the love this movie has been getting in anticipation of its release has been centered around the aesthetic. The delightful, pastel, Kindercamp aesthetic. And you really do love to see it. But some people are of the opinion that there was more to the marketing of this movie than there is to the actual movie, and I'm not inclined to disagree. All the positive lead-up to the movie sort of gave me a false hope that the film's message would amount to more than just typical white feminism, that it would have some genuinely insightful commentary on gender roles and the patriarchy, but instead, as far as that aspect goes, it isn't really any more insightful than Taylor Swift's The Man music video. And I guess I should have known better than to expect deep, insightful analysis from a Marxist feminist perspective in a movie made in collaboration with one of the most ruthlessly capitalist toy companies in the business. I was genuinely hoping this movie would inspire me to make a video going over its message about patriarchy. And I mean, technically it did, that's why I'm here now, but it's not in the way I would have preferred. Honestly, some of the marketing did hint that things wouldn't measure up as expected. That one scene in the trailer where Ryan Gosling can and Simu Liu can get in each other's faces and threaten to beach each other off.
If I wasn't severely injured, I would beat you off right now, Ken.
I'll beat you off with you any day, Ken.
Prompting Barbie to step in between them and break it up. A pastel tableau reminiscent of the intervention of the Sabine women. Both Kens were acting out of machismo in this scene, and it seemed kind of odd and unfitting that machismo would be a thing in a feminist utopia like Barbie Land. It seemed like the movie was falling back on stereotypes about gender rather than meaningful insight about gender. But at the time, I thought little of it and just got swept up in all the optimistic anticipation of the film's release. Now having seen it, those seeds of apprehension have come into full bloom. Before the movie was even released, elements of the plot had already been predicted by some of its more devoted enthusiasts. Primarily that Ken would take on the role of the film's antagonist by corrupting Barbie Land with patriarchal influence upon returning from the real world. And I thought, pshaw! Pshaw, I say! Surely they would have something deeper to say about patriarchy, rather than going for such a low-hanging fruit. But those predictions turned out to be accurate. The main conflict is indeed Ken being influenced by the patriarchy in the real world and bringing it back to Barbie Land, prompting the Barbies to mount a resistance to prevent the Kens from altering the Barbie Land constitution to make male domination official. This premise doesn't exactly lend itself to the type of nuanced commentary I was hoping for. I was mining for gold, yet only struck copper. And post-release, much of the conversation about the movie's social commentary has devolved into whether or not the message is misandrist. It's not, by the way. I did a whole video about misandry, and this movie ain't it. But it is ultimately a corporate product that isn't going to educate anyone beyond basic white feminism 101. And I'll admit, personally, to putting a bit too much faith in the movie to deliver anything more than that. This movie upholds the misconception that patriarchy is as good for men as it is bad for women, and it does this by not defining patriarchy any deeper than the basic layman's definition, basically just reducing it to the issue of who gets to be in charge. And it's not like the movie is under any obligation to deliver that nuance. Like I said, I was the one who got my hopes up by expecting it to. But there were several points where the movie had the opportunity to make a deeper analysis of the impact of patriarchy where the Kens are concerned, but completely missed that opportunity. For example, and this is probably my biggest issue with the movie's plot, when the Barbies are mounting their resistance, they mention that the Kens' biggest weakness is each other, and initially I thought, oh, they're gonna teach the Kens a lesson about how patriarchy promotes a dog-eat-dog mentality amongst men. Dope. But that's not exactly what's at stake here. The Barbies trick their Ken boyfriends into thinking they're all cheating on them with other Kens, thus sowing discord amongst the Kens and getting them to declare a Ken civil war. Now, there was an opportunity here. This plotline could have gone the way of having the Kens realize that they had never been this willing to brutalize each other before they had been introduced to patriarchy. That yes, patriarchy does allow men to have power and control, which can be fun. At least for a while. Just ask your father. It also necessitates that power and control be maintained by means of violence and domination. But that's not what it's about. This whole Ken battle that the Barbies orchestrated was only just a means to distract the Kens so that they missed the deadline to change the Barbieland constitution like they had planned. That and an excuse to have a song and dance number, which I'm not complaining about. Ultimately, the only commentary about the negative effects of patriarchy where the male perspective is concerned is some mild lip service from Ryan Gosling and one other Ken about how being in charge of society is actually kind of hard. Well, technically there is also the existence of Alan. Alan is meant to represent the type of man who does not succeed in patriarchy, because he's one of the smaller fish to be eaten by the larger fish, so to speak. Hence why he is allied with the Barbies when they carry out their resistance. Fun fact, did you know that Barbie's pregnant friend Midge is played by Emerald Fennell, the writer and director of the movie Promising Young Woman? Speaking of Emerald Fennell and Promising Young Woman, she really does seem to understand the two-sided aspect of patriarchy. That under patriarchy, female bodies are reduced to sex objects, while male bodies are reduced to violence objects. Promising Young Woman is written in such a way as to harshly critique the sexual objectification of female bodies, otherwise known as rape culture, without falling back on the reactionary endorsement of violent objectification of male bodies. In fact, subverting the viewer's expectations when the movie seems to be headed in that direction, which I'm sure disappointed the viewers who were expecting a violent power fantasy. Now, Promising Young Woman was an indie passion project. The Barbie movie is a big-budget family movie. It's not coming in with that heavy commentary. Besides, it's established that the Barbies and Kens don't have genitals or sex drives. So when Ken brings patriarchy to Barbieland, he doesn't bring rape culture. The Barbies are put into domesticated service roles, but the Kens aren't violating their bodily autonomy or anything. It's not that kind of patriarchy. It's a silly patriarchy. There's a recurring joke that Ken doesn't even seem to fully grasp patriarchy, thinking it involves horses because much of the aesthetic of patriarchy centers on frontier imagery. No one in Barbieland is having their body used as a sex object. However, there's a plot point in the movie where Barbie brings two characters from the real world, a Mattel employee named Gloria and her daughter, Sasha, into Barbieland to find that it's been taken over by the Kens. Afterward, there's a scene where Gloria and Sasha are driving Barbie's pink car back to the real world, with Alan coming along because he also wants to get out of the newly patriarchal Barbieland, only for them to be confronted with a bunch of construction worker Kens attempting to build a wall to prevent escape. This situation is resolved by Alan just starting a fight and beating them all up, just soloing them. The fight choreography is well done and all, but it is rather disappointing that this movie that proposes to be critical of patriarchy falls back on the uncritical use of violent objectification of male bodies as a resolution to this plot point. Even if it has been established that injury and the lasting effects of violence don't exist in Barbieland, it's the principle of the thing, you see. Something else that irked me. There's a scene in the movie when Barbie meets the human girl, Sasha, in the real world. This scene functions as a bit of corporate lampshading, as Sasha chews Barbie out by regurgitating all the general criticisms the Barbie brand has cultivated over the years, closing off her rant by calling Barbie a fascist, in a more pejorative sense than a literal one. Barbie is distraught over this, wondering why she would be accused of being a fascist, as she doesn't make the trains run or control the flow of commerce. And I just wanted to be like, Barbara, what you're talking about is a fascist government. Fascism is a political ideology, not necessarily a form of government in and of itself. Fascists are still fascists even when they're not in power. Mussolini and his black shirts were still fascists even before they were in a position to make the trains run, Hitler and his Nazis were still fascists before they were in a position to control the flow of commerce. Also, maybe people wouldn't accuse you of being a fascist if you weren't wearing so much Chanel. Ultimately, the main problem with this movie is due to its limitations in being a brand movie. True feminism is intersectional. Intersectional feminism links its opposition to patriarchy with an opposition to white supremacy and with capitalism. This movie was made in collaboration with Mattel, a capitalist toy company. It's not going to object to capitalism in its text or its subtext, and it's not going to deliver a criticism of patriarchy that intersects with a criticism of capitalism. Hence why the film's feminism is so underwhelming.
We are so glad you came. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye now. Bye. Bye-bye.